welcome to Hanging by a Thread. My name is Ailsa, and this is a knitting channel where I talk about what's on my needles, the plans that I'm making, and all things yarny to keep you company while you're crafting. Today, we're going to be jumping into talking about my winter knitting plans. I'm a little bit later with this than I thought I was going to be, but we're here now. We're going to talk about that, as well as talking a little bit about my fall knitting plans, how I got on with that, and how that's kind of shaping what I'm thinking about for the winter. I am going to be looking at my laptop a bit while we're talking today, and I'm going to be sharing some of what I'm looking at. So I talked about this in my fall knitting plans video about how I use the app Milanote to put my plans together. So as we kind of review what my fall plans were and how I got on, and then look at my winter plans, I'm going to have that up on my screen and I'll share it here so you can kind of see what I'm looking at and what I'm thinking about. I'll also be sharing some of the yarn I'm going to be using, all of that good stuff, just to give you a glimpse at what's coming, or what I'm hoping is going to be coming. So let's start off by looking at what I had planned for the fall. So here we have my Milanote fall knitting plans board, and really what I had was 5 kind of concrete plans that I was hoping to get to. So we'll just go through this quickly and I'll tell you whether I achieved this goal or if I didn't, or what happened instead. So yeah, we'll just walk through this kind of briefly. I don't want to go into it too much, but I wanted to kind of talk this through because I'm hoping to share some insights that have influence how I'm thinking about my next season of knitting. So first up, we had the Fidalgo Cardigan, and this I do have casted on, but I have not finished it. This is a pattern from Michelle Frazetta. I'm working it up in this purple yarn. It's Farmer's Daughter's Fibers Craggy Tweed, which is a DK weight yarn. And so that project is ongoing. It's not finished, but it is on the needles, and it is one that's coming forward with me into the winter season. Then we had the Book Club Cardigan by Sari Nordland. This one did not happen. I ended up changing the idea of the yarn I wanted to use for it. So that was one thing that happened. I didn't love the Hayfield bonus Aran that I was planning to use. I used that yarn in a different project we'll talk about in a minute. But I ended up not liking that yarn very much. So I destashed the yarn that I had and I got some different yarn. So I am still pretty committed to working on this one. I have a whole sweaters quantity ready to go for it. But it just didn't happen. It was, I had some other things come up that I worked on. I still feel quite intimidated by this pattern, and it just didn't make sense. It didn't happen this time. So that one's still kind of on the back burner, but didn't happen this fall. Next up, we have the Thru Lines, which is a scarf / shawl by Andrea Mowry. I have cast this on. It's in progress. It's not finished. It's a lot slower going than I thought it was going to be as a project, which is okay. I kind of want it to be done now, and I think I'm going to have to make some more sustained effort on moving it forward, but hopefully I can get it done not too long from now in order to have this piece for the rest of the winter. Luckily, where I live in southern Ontario, winter lasts pretty much forever, so I should still get a lot of use out of it if I can finish it early on in the season. Next up, we had the Lumme. I did not cast this on. I ended up doing a couple of test knits in the fall. So I made the Winterflower sweater by Lillian. Now Knits by Lillian is her handle. So I ended up making a Colourwork yoke sweater as a test knit that I still want to make the Lumme, but it kind of fulfilled that niche in the fall. So maybe I'll come back to the Lumme sweater next fall when I'm ready to make another Colourwork yoke sweater. So yeah, this kind of one almost got swapped out for the test knit I did. I also did pick up another Colourwork test knit, which was the Brighten Sweater that I'm still currently working on. So yeah, this one just kind of got edged out by some test knits I did. And that's okay. I think I talked in my fall knitting plans about how I see this as kind of like a menu of things to pick from, some intentions rather than concrete plans. And I think holding quite loosely to these plans is helpful for me because I like having flexibility. And then the final plan I had was making the dinosaur sweater by Pernille Larsen for my daughter. This was a Halloween make. She was dressing up as a dinosaur for Halloween, and so having a little dinosaur sweater was part of that. And yeah, I finished this, loved it, had a lot of fun making it. It was my first big intarsia project, and that was really satisfying to do. She seems to enjoy wearing it, so all good there. And that's one I can tick off. As well as those projects that I had planned for in the fall, I also did a couple of gift knits. I didn't do an extensive amount of gift knitting this season, but I did get a couple of smaller items in. And then also, I've been working on my Advent socks, and those will be wrapped up shortly. So if we look back at my fall knitting plans, of those five concrete plans, 3 got cast on, 1 got finished, and 2 are still in progress. I did have 4 finished objects over that fall making period. So 2 accessories, which was the gift knits that I did, 1 children's sweater and 1 adult sweater. So yeah, that's kind of how my fall making looked. The kind of insights that I pulled from this as I was thinking about making some winter knitting plans is that signing up for test knits definitely impacts my plans and changes up what I'm doing. But that's okay. I'm all right with that. Again, I really value having flexibility in my plans and being able to make those changes. And test knits are something that I really enjoy doing and I get a lot of satisfaction from. So I wouldn't want to stop myself because I said I was going to knit one sweater over another. I think I've also kind of thought, okay, I can probably finish 2 garments in a season alongside some accessories or smaller projects. That's just useful for me to know, to think about what's realistic with, my life, my other commitments, my knitting speed, that, so that I have a real sense of like, okay, if I'm going to dedicate my time somewhere, where am I going to dedicate it? Just so I can kind of have a sense of what I want to put my focus on. Yeah, I've already said this, treating my plans as a menu is really helpful for me. I like having plans, I like having ideas, I like having goals, but nothing that feels too restrictive. So that does feel like a good way to keep going with my planning process. And then finally, I really want my planning process to be a tool that helps me with my Stash Down 2026 goals. So now that we've had a bit of a look at my fall plans and how that all worked out, let's look forward to what I'm planning on working on in the winter season. A big part of my winter plans is going to be finishing up some of those projects that I'm carrying forward. So let's first of all talk about what those are. So number 1 is is the Brighten Sweater by Sarah Opie. I have been test knitting this. So this was a secret test knit, and the test knit required me to knit the yoke and 1 sleeve. I'm now on the 2nd sleeve and have the body to finish. This is an all-over fingering weight Colourwork fingering weight pattern. So it is intense, but also it's really easy to get in a rhythm with, and I really enjoy working on it. And my possibly over-ambitious stretch goal is to be able to finish this by the end of 2025. I'm recording this on Tuesday, December 23rd. Is that completely wild to think I could finish the body of a sweater and a sleeve in essentially a week, 8 days. Maybe, maybe that is completely wild, but we'll see. That's kind of what I'm thinking though. I would really like to get this one off the needles, ready to wear. I'm really excited for it. Sorry, I have strands of yarn hanging everywhere. And yeah, just make some space by getting this like very big but very exciting project off my needles as early on in this winter season as possible. Next up, we have my Fidalgo cardigan. I am in the middle of a row here. Apologies, so it looks a little bit awkward. This is where I'm at on this. So again, this is a pattern from Michelle Frazetta, Michi Frez Knits. I want to aim to get this done ideally by the end of January. That's kind of my internal deadline. There's no reason it has to be done then, but there does come a point I find, and I wonder if anyone else has this, when something has been on your needles for a more extended period, that it starts to feel like almost pressurized. So I don't want this to be a lingering whip for too much longer. I forget when I cast this on, probably October. Yeah, that sounds about right. So I would kind of like to just see some progress on this, get it off the needles, start having it in my wardrobe because I think it's going to be such a useful piece. As you can see, I'm making good progress through the body, but I'm not spending huge amounts of time on this at the moment. So maybe once my Brighten sweater is done, this can move more into the foreground. But, I guess it will have to move more into the foreground if I want to finish it before or by the end of January. Yeah. So we'll see. That's certainly a goal. I'm not sure how realistic that is, and if it takes longer, it takes longer. But yeah, this one is one that I'm definitely looking to make some progress on and to complete in this season. If nothing else, I want this done by the end of the winter season. The next project I'm carrying forward is a ranunculus that I'm making. This was kind of an impulse cast on. And I'm knitting it in drops brushed alpaca silk. You can see I've got the yoke done, and I'm just working on some raglan increases before the sleeve split. This is going to be a long sleeve version, but because it's such a large gauge, I think it's 14 stitches, it does work up very quickly. And for that reason, I'm kind of hoping that I could actually get this done in early January. Early to mid-January. Let's try and be kind to myself. I actually don't know if these timelines I've set for myself are completely unreasonable or whether I will be able to achieve them. I guess we'll see. And maybe in a future, in my spring knitting plans video, we'll talk about how those timelines ended up working out. But I do think this is going to be a quick knit. Once we get past sleeve separation, it is going to be stockinette in the round on this really large gauge. So it should be possible to make some pretty fast progress on this. So yeah, that's that one. That's that plan moving forward. And then finally, the last project I'm bringing forward with me into the winter season is my Thru Lines scarf. This is where I'm at. It is not even halfway yet. I am still working on the increases on this one. I really love this project, but it is a lot more involved than I thought it was going to be. It's not possible for me to get into a real rhythm or groove with this, and I really do have to concentrate on it. So I think I need to give it more dedicated time on a regular basis to make that progress. I've said for my ideal timeline for this, I would love to get this done by the end of January. I'm not sure how realistic that is, but end of January moving into February is probably like the coldest part of the year here. And it would be so great to have this cozy scarf. And I really, 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 really want to have this done. So I think if I put some time into it alongside the other things I'm hoping to work on, maybe that is possible. I'm going to pause here to explain how I think about seasonal knitting plans, and apologize, this is maybe a little bit chaotic and maybe I should have said this up front. But so I think about seasonal knitting plans in terms of basically from equinox to solstice, or equinox to equinox, solstice to solstice. So for me, winter knitting plans encompasses December 21st to March 21st. So from the winter solstice through to the spring equinox. But in reality, winter in this part of the world does last probably a little bit longer than that. It's cold often through March and into April. So there's a little bit of flexibility with when I'm going to be wanting to wear warmer garments. Although it's also possibly true that by the time we're hitting mid-March, April, I'm going to want to be starting to knit on some more spring-like projects. So yeah, I think like holding myself to that mid-March as when I'm officially counting the start of the spring knitting season makes sense. So yeah, when I say I have these project plans that I want to wrap up by the end of January, that really gives me a month and a half of the rest of the season to be playing with and thinking about in terms of doing my winter knitting. And as I say that, I'm starting to think the plans I've made for myself are a little bit unrealistic, but we'll talk about that. And yeah, we'll get into it in a minute. So we've talked about the projects I'm carrying forward, and there's quite a lot there. And I'm aware that there's a lot there. So I have tried to be fairly restrained in what I'm planning for new cast-ons, but maybe I've completely failed in that, and you can let me know what you think down below. Am I a little bit cuckoo on this one? Have I just grossly overestimated my ability to knit more? Let me know what you think, but let's take a look at some of the things I'm hoping to work on. So I'm now pulling up my Milano board with my winter 2026 knitting plans. So I've done things a little bit differently on this one. I have up here in this corner my projects carrying forward, which we just talked about. So we have those 4 projects there. And then I've got the list of my priorities. So for me this season, the priorities are cardigans and layering, using stash yarn, so supporting my stash yarn 2026 goals, not making anything that's going to require me to buy new yarn, and using my pattern library. We'll talk about how these plans do or do not achieve that, and kind of go through some of these in a little bit more detail. The first thing I'm going to talk to you about is a plan that I don't really have a plan for yet, and I would love your thoughts. So I have this swatch. Let's see if we can get that focused. There we go. So this is a swatch with Brooklyn Tweed Loft alongside Ailsa Soft Silk Mohair. And I completely forget the names of the colorways, but I'll note those below. The Brooklyn Tweed, the dark gray, is the same as the yarn I'm using in my Thru Lines. And then I had this kind of black, dark gray Ailsa Soft Silk Mohair. So I'm holding those together. Originally, my plan for this combo was that I was going to make the April cardigan by Petite Knit. But one of the things about the Brooklyn Tweed is that although it is categorized as a fingering weight yarn, it is a woolen spun, so it actually works up at quite a large gauge. And when I swatched, I got, this is 15 stitches by 26 rows on equals 4 inches with the recommended needle sizes for the April cardigan. And that is something like, I think it's like 7 or 8 stitches off the pattern gauge for the April cardigan. And I really don't want to go down the number of needle sizes I would need to go down in order to achieve the pattern gauge for the April cardigan. So essentially what my swatch told me was it's time to pivot. It's time to do something different with this yarn. I do have some other yarn in stash that I think will make a beautiful April cardigan. It's a light purple color, and that's almost certainly going to be a spring knitting plan. I also just want to throw out here that the April cardigan was incredibly kindly gifted to me by a viewer. And so I am really excited to knit it. And I do think it's a concrete plan for the spring knitting with that other yarn. So I'm excited about that. The other thing about this swatch to note is that I want to knit this, whatever project I do, continental. I like practicing my continental knitting. I'm primarily an English thrower when I knit, but I just like doing new things in my knitting. When I was swatching, I was practicing my continental and including my continental purl, because for a cardigan, typically when I work continental, I do an Eastern style purl. I don't know how I taught myself to do that. But somehow when I was learning continental, I taught myself Eastern, which is where you wrap the yarn clockwise instead of counterclockwise. I think that's right. And so what that essentially means is you end up having to knit through the back loop. I have no problem knitting through the back loop. I don't find it tedious at all. But I wanted to see if I could figure out doing a more standard, and that isn't the right word, because of course everyone who purls in the Eastern European style is doing something standard and is doing it right. But I wanted to see if I could figure out purling an alternative way continentally. So this one, in this swatch, I was practicing the Norwegian purl, and I really liked how it turned out. I think the tension is looking really quite good on this. Like my knits and purls are not rowing out substantially. So I was actually quite excited about that. So from this gauge swatch where I have 15 stitches and 26 rows, I'm not sure what to do. So here's two conflicting things. I did really want to make a cardigan. That's one of my priorities for the winter. But there wasn't a cardigan pattern in my library, which is another one of my goals for this winter, that I have that will match this gauge. So here are my choices. So I could make a California sweater. I'm actually currently wearing my California sweater today in this video. I love this pattern. I love this sweater. It's one of my most worn pieces. So I could make another California sweater, which has a gauge of 15 stitches and 22 rows. So I could do that. I have that in my pattern library. I love this pattern. I think it would look really nice, just a basic kind of gray Marley sweater, very useful, would get a lot of wear out of it. Obviously the row gauge is different, so I'd have to do some maths on that, but 15 stitches, perfect. And then I can just go ahead with the yarn I have and a pattern I already own. Or if I wanted to prioritize the cardigan, I could do the Cognac Cardigan. And I'm blanking on the name of the designer, so let me just look that up for you. Okay, yes, it's the Cognac Cardigan by Atelier Castin, or Castine. So that has a gauge of 16 stitches and 22 rows, so maybe I would go down a needle size to try and get closer to that. But beautiful cardigan option. I've seen people make it and rave about this pattern. I've really wanted to try this designer, and I was kind of committed to the idea of a beautiful cardigan in this like lovely neutral, beautiful gray. I think that's possibly where I'm leaning, but I'm really divided on this one because I have two competing priorities. I have cardigans versus using pattern library, and I'm not 100% sure where to go on this one. So if you have strong feelings one way or another, please let me know. But yeah, that's something with this swatch and this combination. I'm really excited to work with this yarn and to practice my continental and my Norwegian pals. Like, I think something that I am realizing is that I like adding little challenges for myself into each project. And for this one, if it's going to be a more plain stockinette cardigan, getting to practice those techniques feels really exciting to me. So This one is plan 1. Up next, we have a plan that I had originally planned for this to be a New Year's Day cast on. And I'm not sure if I'm still going to do that or if I'm going to kind of rejig when I cast this on or how I work on this. But this is the Vita Cardigan by Susan. I'll double check. I'll write it down. Crawford. This is from her book from Liner. Again, I'm completely blanking on the name. Let me look it up. Let me correct this. Okay, so this is from the book Echoes by Susan Crawford. And this book is wonderful for many reasons, but it's inspired by women in history that Susan Crawford was admires or is inspired by, and I just love that. I love a lot of Susan Crawford's design. She does a lot of vintage patterns where she takes vintage patterns and then like regrades them for a more modern size range, or kind of adapts them. I think her aesthetic is really wonderful, and I think what she's doing is really great, but I've never knit one of her patterns before. I'm very excited to make this. So the Vita Cardigan is an all-over Colourwork cardigan that you do steek, and I've never steeked before, so again, adds in that challenge. I was inspired to make this because I was watching Kate Casts On, who's a YouTuber here on YouTube, who has a channel here on YouTube, and she finished a Vita cardigan in the fall, and I'll link to her video about her cardigan because it's absolutely stunning and I love it, and it completely inspired me. I immediately wanted to make one of my own. And at that point I did buy the yarn, and I have a swatch here to show you. So this is knit up in Filcolana Saga. This is a woolen spun fingering weight yarn. It is so nice to work with. It is like just so perfectly bouncy, and I don't know, it felt, when I was knitting this swatch, it was just joyful to work with. I got really, really excited about it. You can see I messed up my swatch a little bit. I got off on my diamond repeats there, but I would rather make those mistakes in a swatch than on the main thing, so not worried about that. But you can see in here I have all of the colors that I would be using in the garment, and I'm really quite happy with how that's looking. I think this is going to be such a fun make. The only color that I'm a little bit uncertain about is this orange here. It's the colorway is pumpkin, and I bought this online from a local yarn store here in Southern Ontario called Galt House of Yarn. And this is no shade on them at all, but I think on my screen this orange read as a little bit more rusty, whereas it's a little bit brighter in person. So there's part of me that wants to get a different color, and for those of you who have seen my stash down video, I am on a yarn ban, and I don't know. I think it's probably okay. I'm not certain. Tell me what you think. Should I change this? Should I make a little exception to get a color that I feel better about? But yeah. So this is the swatch. The other thing I'll say about this swatch is I followed a technique that Rachel Is Knitting was talking about in one of her Vlogmas videos, and I will try and remember which one it was and link to that as well, where I think it was Hazel Tyndall's method. So, okay, step back. So often when you're swatching for in the round, lots of people do a quick method of making a circular swatch where you essentially pull the floats along the back and kind of loosely have them across the back so that you can mimic being in the round. And that can often work really well. But I've found that especially with Colourwork, it makes it difficult when you're carrying floats, and it makes it difficult to it often kind of feels like, for me, it just like bunches up my color work more than it typically would be when I'm in the garment, and I don't get an accurate read on my swatch. So this method, instead of pulling the yarn behind the swatch and creating kind of big loops on the back, you cut the yarn at the end of every row, tie a knot, and then reattach the yarn at the start of the next row. So, and you slide your work back along the needle the same way you would if you're making that kind of quick style swatch. But instead of carrying the yarn across the back, you're cutting and rejoining. And that just made a much easier to manage and read Colourwork swatch for me. So I would definitely be doing that in the future. This was such a successful swatching method for me. So that was also very cool to learn. And thank you to Rachel from Rachel is Knitting for sharing that knowledge. I really, really appreciate that. So yeah, this is this one. So I think I already said my plan originally was to have this as a New Year's Day's cast on. And then I started working on the Brighten Sweater, and I was like, wow, am I really going to want to go from one full Colourwork fingering weight sweater to a full Colourwork fingering weight cardigan, like back to back? Am I really going to want to do that? I was like, I don't know. Then I made the swatch, and I was having so much fun. I was really excited and wanted to cast this on like right away. So I was like, yes, I do want to cast it on. And now I'm kind of debating again, because I do have these other projects that I want to get finished. And if I start working on this, will it just take over my life and I'll never finish my Fidalgo cardigan or my Thru Lines? Possibly. What I'm thinking at the moment is I'm going to keep this as a New Year's Day cast on, but know that this is not something that I'm necessarily planning to finish in the winter, that this might be my long-term whip. Maybe this is like my 2026 whip, and the goal is to get it done by the end of the year. And so maybe it'll be like I get to treat myself with it after I've made progress on my other whips, or I don't know. I do know I'm really excited about this project, and this is in the category of dream projects for me. This is like a magnum opus type project. It has the all over color work, it has the Farewell patterning, it has the steeking, which is new for me. So I'm just really excited by it, and I do want to kind of start dipping my toes into it. So I think I am going to cast it on New Year's Day, but just know that I might not immediately throw myself into it, so I can make some progress on some of these other things. The final thing I have in my kind of definites is the Firth Pullover by Rebecca Clow. This is another pattern that was so generously gifted by a viewer, and I'm so grateful for. This is a pattern that came out in, I think, the fall of 2025, and it's this beautiful satin sleeve with this like wonderful ribbing detailing. It's a basic, but basic plus, because it's got these kind of really great details on it. And I have yarn ready to go for this, because I had a swatch of, and I don't have it here with me, so apologies, I can't show that to you right now, of Haiku Sueño that perfectly meets gauge for this sweater. And so my goal is to make this sweater in that Haiku Sueño. I already know that my gauge is correct for it. I could just cast on and go. So this could be one that I maybe cast on a little bit later in the winter season, because I think it would carry through into the spring really nicely. It's a DK weight sweater, but again, it can stay chilly here for a while. I think this could be one that might get cast on at the tail end of my winter knitting and then carry on into the spring. Finally, over here, in kind of a concession to my my desire to knit all the things, I have my wish list, which is kind of like my little extra bit of the menu. Like, if I could eat everything on the menu, this is what I would add in. I'm not necessarily expecting to get to these, but it would be nice if I did, and maybe some of them will creep in. The thing I think that's most likely to creep in is this Boston Blizzard hood. I bought this pattern in the fall, and the designer was having a sale on its release, so I think I got it at a really good price. And And essentially it's a hood which has a built-in gaiter. And oh my goodness, this would be so good for when I'm out walking in like January, February when it is bitterly cold here. And I have some leftover double Sunday yarn that I think I could make a scrappy version of this with, and it would be really fun and really cute. I did also somewhat optimistically put the book club cardigan on here. I don't think I'm really going to cast this on this season. Maybe it's going to be pushed back to be a summer cast on even, and then I could have it ready for the fall. That's kind of an idea. But I wanted to just like acknowledge that I still really want to make this. This one's going to be a big challenge for me. And I'm scared of it, but I didn't want to like let it go yet because I really do hope to make it. It's been on my list for a long time. I think I've had it on, I think I bought the pattern last December. So it's really been one that I've been thinking about for a long time. I really do want to get to it in 2026. And, you know, maybe if I suddenly become a knitting machine in January, maybe it'll get cast on, but probably not. But I'm just keeping it here in the wish list just to keep that little dream alive. And then finally, we have the Arcuate Vest, which, so I don't own this pattern, but I do have yarn in stash that I have set aside to go towards this project. I came across this pattern because Knitted by Whitney made it and highly recommended it. And for this one, the thinking was one, layering pieces. That was another one of my priorities. And two, I was kind of thinking of it as another kind of practice project because cables aren't something that I have done a lot of. So I kind of thought if I did a cable project that's a little bit more basic than the book club cardigan, maybe I could increase my confidence, build up my skill set, get more comfortable, and then be ready to tackle the book club cardigan. So of this wish list, I think the most likely to be cast on is the Boston Blizzard hood, followed by the Arcuate vest, and then the book club cardigan. But I would not be surprised if I didn't get to any of those, truthfully. I hope you enjoyed going through these plans with me and getting a glimpse of what may be coming down the line in the coming months. If you did enjoy this video, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up. And if you do want to follow along and see which of these patterns actually makes it onto the needles, whether I ever get the Fidalgo and the Thru Lines done, don't forget to subscribe so that you can keep up with all of my progress in the coming months. And let me know what you're planning on working on. I'm always so curious to know what other people are working on, how you make your plans, how you decide what you're going to work on next. Let's keep the conversation going down in the comments. Would love to chat with you. Okay, until next time, take care, everyone. Bye.